groups. So I think our plan today is to stay in one group rather than split into multiple
Yeah.
groups, because it's just, it's a smaller group, and I think we'll benefit from hearing, from others who we haven't heard before. It's actually a useful
Exactly.
thing.
Exactly. So, so I'm going to do a screen share. Give me a second to set it up, and then we'll get started. And I know we're recording, so I can do this. Give me a second. There we go. Awesome. All right. So, so today we're going to cover a lot of stuff with you, and it all hinges on Agile and accelerating what you're doing and making sure that what you're doing is what you should be doing, and how quickly can you launch it. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Now for homework, and Jerry, thank you for suggesting that we get the homework assignments out earlier, the slides out, so that you have time to actually do something with it. The main thing was the shift timeline, and we're going to be using that a lot today going forward. So if you kind of sort of did it, or you didn't do it, or you did do it, you're going to be revisiting it, and we're going to be giving you time to do that today. And this was the tool that we gave you to use. It's essentially, we encourage you to work it backwards. Oh yeah, where are you going in 3 years? But then what is towards that, what's got to happen this week, the next 3 weeks, and the next 3 months. So we're going to be spending a fair amount of time on that. Hey, Vic, if you don't mind putting yourself on mute. Thanks. So the chip timeline is all about that. So we'll be bringing it up again. So now the last slide that I'm going to be doing before I turn it over to Edna is Agile. And Agile, and this is the first time we're introducing the MVP to you, but it's minimum viable product or service, depending on what you have. And the idea of an MVP is, just start with something quick and easy. One second, I'm admitting somebody. So start with something quick and easy. And as most entrepreneurs, we all want to make sure it's great and perfect before we launch. And by that time, we might have missed the boat. In fact, a guy named Reid Hoffman, he's the founder, one of the co-founders of LinkedIn, once said that if you're not completely embarrassed by your MVP, you launch too late, or something to that effect. So we're going to encourage you guys to launch quickly. And the Agile philosophy, as I told you last week, comes from programming. And you know what? What's the quick and dirty that we can get out there now, and figure out what works and what doesn't work about it, and what we need to adjust, and then and then adjust it, and then try it again, and so it goes. So that's the Agile philosophy and MVP, and we're going to be speaking a lot about MVP today with you. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Edna.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I wanted to say something about Agile. When I first went through this class, I had no idea what it was. I kind of looked it up, and what it is just basically the back end of what's going on with you. So it's almost like what we're talking about with the roadmap. And sometimes we get to some hurdles that we need to jump over. So for me, as a coach and life purpose coach, there's millions, probably thousands, maybe millions of them. I had to find out what was good for it. So I had to tweak, and I didn't do it one time. I didn't do it 3 times. I did it almost like 10 times. Tweak, who my client was, and I had to create a project. So I think what today we're going to talk about is your minimum viable project and purpose, and like what are you doing it for, to get a result out of, and or a little small program that you can kind of put together to make all of this information come together so you can get where you need to go really quickly. So I'm having problems with my internet over here, so I'm just going to turn my camera off. Can you still hear me?
I hear you great.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you better now. Yeah, I was,
All right,
the
go.
the audio was
Okay.
coming through difficult.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. So what you need to do in this portion of it is define and refine your idea. So my idea was to work with women and specifically Black women that were in generational trauma. That was where I first started, working with those in generational trauma. Now, how could I fit this into, and get the data that I needed? I had to create a project. I had to create a test. So what I would do is literally, put myself out there and ask the questions, how this is supposed to work. So I can define and refine my idea, because I knew it was a great idea. I knew how it was going to work. I just didn't know how it was going to operate and how I could stand out. So I had to create a project around my purpose. 2, you're going to develop and modify your MVP, which could be your project or your purpose. And I had to literally keep modifying it so that I could really stand out, and really use all of my what I had already put together, what my end goal was, whether it be 3 years or whatever it was. I had to put it all together, and I wanted to get actionable right then and there. And then 3, you try it out on customers. So that's what I started doing. The next day that I was in this workshop, the next day I put it together and I just tried it out. I just jumped out into the water and started doing something with it. So I just tried it out. And as I tried it out and I received more engagement, I asked those people, hey, what do you think about this? And sometimes we don't want to hear the feedback, but it's important, and I wanted to, be different. I wanted to stand out, and I wanted my coaching business to work more so than anyone else's. I wanted it to work. Okay. So you have to try it out, and you do this with your customers. It's really important who they are. So you have to really do that. Next slide.
Can you just talk also about how long it took you to go from your idea to actually, operationalizing your idea?
Sure. What I did do, and I'll tell you, I really got out there. I really saturated myself in all of my social media, and I put a plan together to literally get people to come on and talk to me about it, right? To literally talk to me about it, because I have a podcast. So I use that platform to kind of get an idea where I am and how this works. So I put together a marketing, what do they call it? Tom, what do they call it? When you grab people's information, I can't even think. What is it? Okay, so I grabbed everybody's information. So I created a marketing tool, right? It's a funnel. And I said, ask them if they'd be in my podcast. And so in my presentation, there's a link. And then in that link, when they want to be my guest, right, or be someone that wants to talk to me about that particular thing, I asked them questions specific about me and about them and how it worked. So once we came on and had a pre-show conversation, I found out more information how I could make my business easier and better. So I started out and I went I use the sheet all the time. I will tell you that I'm always going back to the sheet because whenever I get to a hurdle, I bring this sheet out, and I go over the 3 week. Okay, what's my hurdle now? And I need to step it up in 3 weeks, and then I do 3 months. So I obtained all the information in 3 months.
Sorry, I'm moving things around. This is what Edna's talking about.
So that's, so when I was in the workshop, I said, okay, what am I going to do next week? And I wrote that down. Then what am I going to do in the next 3 weeks? So I'm using the data from the first week for the 3 weeks, and I'm creating data to show how I'm moving forward, how I can move forward and serve my client the best. So in my findings, and just working with Life Purpose, I found out that generational habits and traumas affect business. So I was like, whoa, this is really good. And so now I'm working with entrepreneurs, Black women as entrepreneurs and professional women in their careers. So because generational traumas and habits affect how they ask for pay raises. It affects how they communicate with other people. It affects just in general where they're going in their business. So I found all of this information out just by asking the questions and getting out there, so that I knew what my 3 years was. I knew what that was. I knew what I wanted to look like, how much I wanted to make, who I wanted to be around. I knew all of that. That was like set in stone for me. But when I got to a hurdle, I had to shift, and I didn't know how to shift, because we don't think about that, asking your customer what they want. We don't think about that. We want, a survey after they've bought their product or was involved in the project, but we don't usually ask before we get to the very end. And that's what made the difference, Vic, for me. Does that make sense? Did you guys hear me?
Mhm.
You got it. No, that was very good, Edna. Very
Yeah.
good.
So I'm going to move to this slide.
Well, you already looked at that one.
Yeah, we looked at that.
Wanna
One.
look at-
Go the next direction. Keep going.
Keep going past this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, this is where,
Yeah.
and this
Well, we're
one
gonna-
actually, do you want me to do this one, Edna?
Yeah, go ahead. You can do
Yeah, because this
one.
is,
Yeah, I said a
I
lot.
remember when we talked about it, I know these people better than Edna does.
Yeah.
So this is a couple of different examples of people who came through the workshop, and I'm not going to go as extensively, but just to give you some other ideas from other kind of business. So Lydia was a woman who came into, she has a retail store selling resort wear, swimsuits, and the like, kind of a little bit high end, out in the Hamptons or somewhere. This was during COVID, the store was shut down, as was everyone's store. So she was in panic mode, as was everybody. And so, her shift was, she's not going to do this on her own. She looked at the idea of partnering with other people. So, you remember the gearbox, the partnership was one of the elements you look at. And what someone approached her about, working together to do what they call a trunk show, where you find some outdoor location and you get a couple of retailers together, and you put a sale on, you advertise it, and here we are, we're selling stuff here at some outdoor location. And she did a number of these, and she tested it out with her customers. She has a book of regular customers who come to her store normally. And when she did this, it worked phenomenally. So she in fact had a record fall. She'd been in business for many years in her store, but she never sold as much goods as she did in this particular time when she switched her way of delivering her product. And because there was pent up demand, because all of the shoppers were also stuck at home. And so the opportunity to go out and find some of their, the stores that they liked out participating in this outdoor location really was the right thing to do. So this was just a marvelous little again, a little idea that just allowed her to get through the year, even though it was a lousy year for all kinds of stores. She had a very good year financially because of this. So that's one. Second was a guy named Leif Nilsson, who is a very, very high quality artist. He paints impressionist and really at the level where some of his paintings are very large, go for tens of thousands of dollars. So, you know, a very, very high end artist. And here too, he has sells them in a gallery, so nothing's happening. And so and his whole, you know, he was not only not selling, but he had become very depressed. So he wasn't painting, and nothing was happening. And he came into the workshop. His girlfriend, a woman friend, brought him in, who was someone I knew, and you know he needed a new idea. And what he began to realize is he had sort of art on the shelf. You know, he just made lithographs of some of his works, and he always thought, well, that's sort of beneath me in a way. But you know, when you're hungry, you are look for opportunity, and that's again, it's a minimal viable product. It's a different stream of his work, and he just, you know, going online and getting hooked in with a podcast that was talking about him that would attract people to his online site. He started making quite a number of sales of his lithographs for much lower prices, of course. But it again, it attracted people to him, and once attracted to him, people started to want to commission his work. And suddenly, 6 months after our workshop, he's getting called by people from New York City. Would you come in and paint a special thing, you know, for the wedding that's upcoming in Central Park? So, you know, again, you know, within a year, he had the best year of the last 5 years of his career. So it's, you know, quite phenomenal what people can do when they get out of their stuck place and into, you know, looking at what opportunity can come to them. And then the third group we worked with, this was not one company, but it was actually a whole group of companies that are part of an organization called Long Island Wine Country. It's essentially all the vineyards on Long Island. And they have never cooperated very well in the past. They always sort of compete with each other for, you know, buyers who come out. But again, with the pandemic, no one was getting any business, and they learned about us. So we created a workshop especially for them, and part of the workshop was to talk about how they could collaborate. So the whole shift for them was partnering with each other and with high-end restaurants. And again, you know, the notion of collaboration created an idea of creating a co-branding of the wineries and beginning to do small events between them and the restaurants to draw people's attention to the quality of the wines and how well the wines and the foods of Long Island, you know, the seafood and the agriculture of Long Island fit together. And once again, you know, when you put your mind to it and you create a new marketing focus and a brand, it works. People start paying attention, and they've been, you know, sort of at home, so they look for opportunity for socialization and so forth. So again, the creativity of finding a new way to express your business idea, it begins to find customers. And again, they had a very good success and had some wonderful years, sort of right at the tail of the pandemic. So these are some examples that just come from people who have gone through the same sort of thinking process that you're going through here. So one of the things in addition to, you know, Edna talked a little bit about her own approach to minimal viable product. So I don't know, Stefan, do you want to share a little bit? And I can also share a little bit about
Sure.
my own, a story of mine that I'll jump in and give you a further example, because we really want you to get a grasp. This is one of the most important concepts of the workshop, is this idea of creating a project that can be a short-term focus to get you moving in a direction with a lot of action, as definitely Edna emphasized, and you saw where it got her. So we want you to really get this. Over to you, Stefan.
Sure, and I'm very curious to hear what yours is. My MVP is for Shift Group, and I did it ass backwards. We raised a lot of money and developed a video game before we did the MVP. Before the pandemic hit, it forced us to do the MVP. But one sentence about what we're all about, so it all makes sense to you, and that is, we're all about helping businesses add sustainability into their business model, and that's what we do. And we developed a pretty cool team, and we built a game. We raised a lot of money from that, and then the pandemic hit, and nothing was happening. So what we did is we went to this Shift workshop, and Tom, who was an advisor, came out of retirement to help us with it. And we then partnered, this is all our MVP. We then partnered with Stony Brook University, who brought in Bank of America. And before we knew it, we had this really cool program going. But it all started with our MVP. Before that, it was like, cool, we're getting into schools and stuff, and that was fun. But the MVP is where it really started to switch for us and improve. So one more thing about it, and then I'll turn it over to Tom. But the MVP for us was the pandemic shift that then changed. We revamped it. We're now doing our 14th one. And each time we refine it and improve it. And now it's called the Shift Workshop. And there it goes. Over to you, Tom.
Good. Yeah. So actually, why don't you take the slides down for the moment, because
Sure.
they might be some questions and comments that people may want to talk about as we get done. So I'm going to give you and I just decided this while we were talking. I'm going to talk a little bit about something that happened 20 some odd years ago. So this is an old Shift, an old MVP. It's actually, when I first met, I met Sean and Jeff like a month ago. Because I was out in California for a 20-year anniversary of an organization that I formulated and founded out in Orange County, California. It's called Octane. And so my story has to do with the creation of Octane. Octane stood for Orange County Technology Action Network. So Octane is an ecosystem to help small innovation businesses get started, to help them find money, to help them find people, and to help them learn how to build a business. So I was, when I got started, had been working for a University of California, Irvine, out in Irvine, California. And I had just left the university, so I was sort of on my own. I had started my own business. And I had this idea because I had worked previously at MIT, and I knew a lot of professors and students who started businesses with, innovative ideas, with intellectual property that they had gained from doing research at the university. And when I got to Irvine, it just wasn't happening. There were very few businesses getting started. And I knew that could change, but it was, so all of a sudden I was in a situation where I had time on my hands, and I had been connected with a lot of people. And I said, this could actually happen if I decided to put time and energy into it. And so it's a long story. I'm not going to tell the whole long story, but I gradually began to think of what was this. An ecosystem is combined with, business people, it's got investors, it's got all of transactional people like lawyers and finance people who get involved in that. It has the large companies in the region, and the government agencies. There's all kinds of people involved in it. So how do you get them all working together? So I went around and I was inventing the idea, talking to a lot of people. I must have talked to 100 people, and finally I realized I needed to have money to get it going. So I started talking to some of the larger CEOs of the business community, and they liked the idea. And then we got a consulting company to do a big study of the area and really look at what could be done. Eventually, they agreed, let's do it. And they all put in money to get it started. And to shorten the thing for a lot, it has been very successful. So Octane now has a 20-person staff, and it has, in the time since then, actually since 2010, when they really started seriously measuring, it has helped over 1,500 businesses to get launched in Orange County, California. And those businesses have raised something like $4.5 billion. So it's a big engine for business development, 27,000 jobs and so forth. So it has been very, very successful. I didn't make a whole lot of money out of it. I cannot say that I got rich out of it, but it has been a big success. And it came about from this very same iterative process that Edna pointed out in her own business. It was continually revising the thought about how this had to happen. So that's my somewhat long story about one thing that I got started. So we give you a bunch of different anecdotes and examples here about this idea of having the concept and constantly changing it until you find the way to pull the resources together and get it to happen. So let's just take a pause here. We've said a lot of things, and there might be questions and comments. So let's just hear what people have to say. I see there've been some things going on in the chat. Yeah, okay. So yeah, that's what I met Sean and Jeff out in California when I was out for this, out to join this celebration. It was a celebration of the 20-year anniversary of the founding of Octane. So I met Sean and Jeff, and I said, well, why don't you guys come to this workshop, because it would be interesting, I think, for you. Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, we'll have time to go through and as we talk about your businesses, we'll reflect on some of this. So let's see where we're at now in the slides, and
I'll go back to screen.
yeah, I think so. Yeah. So let's see where we come up to next. I think we are going to have some individual work. Now, going back over to you, Edna, for this.
Tom, can I ask a question? Tom?
No, Tom, finish, because I like what you're saying. So don't stop.
Okay, don't stop. All right, fine. Yeah, so you're still having a little bit of audio trouble. So
Yeah,
okay.
hey, Tom, I have a question.
Yeah, Vit.
Can you go back to slide you just had with the shift slide? So I guess my question is that, I'm developing a new platform, right? So I don't know what specifically, I'm not shifting, I'm not pivoting, I'm just creating something new.
Got it. Yeah.
So how does that kind of, fit into this approach or model?
Yeah, well, I mean, what I would, you're right. I mean, this was set up for when we developed the Shift workshop, we were working with businesses that were established. So that's a little bit the origin of the tool. But in your case, it's still the same thing. It's really, you have to be able to define you could still describe what's your idea in the big sense, and you've already done that to us. But the notion of the minimal viable product is to create something which is really where you're going to start. Because it's one thing to say, well, I'm going to be an online support network for caregivers. Okay, great, I get that. But what's the starting point? Where you can then, and this is now, I go refer you back to the tape of, you ought to have the tape of Edna talking in your head, because it's exactly what she was saying. We're going to work with Black women who've been affected by trauma. All right, well, that's kind of the value proposition that you have is like, I'm going to work with caregivers. Great. What are you going to do? You have to write it down what you're gonna do, and then you just gotta start to talk to those caregivers. This is what I'm gonna do. Is this gonna be useful to you? And then you hear the feedback, and as Edna says, sometimes the feedback is like, I'm not really sure I'm interested in that. But if you could do this, that would be, that would be better. And there's a whole root of, these kind of conversations. I don't know how many conversations Edna had, but I said when I was doing Octane, it was 100 conversations of, sometimes with a CEO, sometimes with an investor, sometimes with a lawyer. Everyone's got a different piece of the pie, and they're all want something different. And then you have to figure out, okay, out of all of that information, how do I discern what's going to really work and that I can do, and it's going to be value that people are going to want? Is that
No,
clear?
thank you for that.
Vic,
No, I appreciate it.
have
That's
a
what I'm
question.
doing now, is that whole voice of the customer, speaking with the key stakeholders, just
Yeah.
validating the need. I know, I have biases. I know what I believe what the need is, but that's data point of one.
Yeah, that's right. It's like when I started, I had a bias of what I thought it ought to be. But so you use your knowledge to start it, but
Yeah.
then you have to be open to the world of the customer. A lot of times when, Tony Robbins, who's a brilliant thinker about these kind of work, helping people, who suffer with different kinds of issues, and they give advice and they teach people how to create programs like what you're doing. That's a high-end, expensive way to do it. But if you got it, it's not a bad way to follow through. But it's very much talking about how do you find your ideal customer. And a lot of times your ideal customer is you a number of years ago. It's like, what did I not know? Oh, and now I know. Well, how do I teach that person? And how do I find that customer? That becomes a key question.
Vic,
How do I find that
to
person?
Tom's point, Vic, do you have Netflix? Okay, there's a TV show series on Netflix. I think it's called Playlist, I think.
Okay.
It's about how Spotify came up with their product and launched and took on Silicon Valley. It's a limited series. I think it's eight or so episodes, I think. But you may want to watch that because it'll give you some idea. I think it'll give you some ideas on how to go from idea to launching to growing to a bigger company.
Thank you, Stefan. Yeah.
No,
And
great
something
tip, Stefan.
I can share with a podcast I have been listening to. It's called How I Built It. I'm a big fan of that. I can share that with the team. I'll put a link to that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, good. Put it in the chat. Great.
Yeah.
All right. So, all right, back to the homework then. Let's shine the light on the homework slide.
Sorry, we're going to homework?
Not the homework, the individual work. I misspoke.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna ask you to speak. Okay, so what we want you to do is write down what now. And here I want to emphasize the point that Edna made. We use the term minimal viable product here, and I'd say in your case, Vic, it's absolutely the right term. Minimal viable product is what you want to focus on. But in the case of Sean and Jeff, they have their product. So I think for their use, there's a number of things that they, a lot of obstacles they have and other areas they need to work on. So it might be in their case that what they need to have is a minimal viable project, for instance, in the case of marketing or developing partnerships. So that in their case, they may ought to be thinking about that. And the idea of this minimal viable product from the workshop perspective and your business life perspective, we have this session and next session, and the notion is we want you to have a 3-month target in mind. We want you to set up something now. I'm going to get this done over the next 3 months, and you're going to start right now next week. start doing, getting it, get an idea, get your idea down and start talking to customers and keep on going, just like Edna did. But at the end of next week, we want you to sort of crystallize that and say, okay, this is my project, I'm going for it. We're going to talk a little bit later today about maybe budgetizing that a little bit, so if you need some resources, what are you going to need to have so you can really get this done. And then when we wrap up next week, we're going to just, kind of build that so that, okay, it's clear what that is. It's just not something you spend 10 minutes on, but okay, it's clear what I'm going to do. Or in the case of Sean and Jeff, what we're going to do, or I'm going to do this and you're going to do that. Boom, got it. So that at the end of the workshop, you've got something. This is important to us. We want you to leave the workshop with something that you have completed, that is setting the 3-month goals, and that we're going to follow up with you. We want to send you a reminder in 3 weeks. How you doing? Are you on your 3-week goals? And then at the end, we're going to how's that going? Because that's part of our service to you, is we want this to move you forward, and that's how it moves you forward. It's not just like one and done. We're gonna chase after you and say, how's it going? So right now, just take 10 minutes to get this started, to craft what the idea of your minimal viable product or project will be, given what you've been thinking about so far. I'm stopping talking, and in 10 minutes, we'll then discuss it as a group. Stefan, would you move the slides? I think I might have forgotten to go to the next slide because we changed the slides right at the end. Yeah, that's right, I did. No, go to it. Yeah, let's just leave it there. Okay, so we're gonna, go into we're not gonna go anywhere. We're gonna just stay here and talk. Each of you talk a little bit about what your idea is, what either your product or your project is going to be, and possible ways you can test that out. And the group will be a sounding board for you, and ask questions and brainstorm some other ideas connected to that. So just as Edna was sharing when she went out to talk to people, be open to hearing what people say, and to learning from how other people are approaching their situation. And then the slide I skipped is one I should have shown about putting more of the detail of your project onto the timeline. But we'll come to that in the homework, so we'll get to that in due time. So maybe let's just show the group. I don't think we need to leave that slide up right now. Yeah, great. All right, so who would like to kick it off?
We've got, because we got a small group, and I didn't say this to the people that came a few minutes late, but so they'll be redundant for a couple of you, but a bunch of people are sick or in the hospital. 2 or 3 people have COVID. 1 person's in the hospital, and Rose in our group, Alan, is in the hospital right now. And 1 person has an event, so, and another person is traveling and on an airplane right now. So whatever. So that's why we decided, you know what, there's only going to be 5 of you guys and 3 of us. Let's do it all in the main room. So you're going to get power coaching right now. So who'd like to go first?
Tom, I've got no problem going first.
So
Well,
looks like Jerry had
you
her
had
hand
your
up.
hand up.
Yeah.
And then you go, Vic, after her.
Okay, so the big idea is money matters, diverse funding for diverse founders. And there's three different iterations of it. One is a book and webinar series. Another is a technology platform that will match founders with the types of financing that is right for their particular situation. And the last is doing regional conferences. And to test the idea, and I think we might even have a sponsor for it, is to do sort of white papers on the need for women and minorities to understand all their financing options, because if they did, they would raise money faster and at a lower cost. And these it could be one or three or several white paper like. It would just be posted on the website. It would be branded by a sponsor. And it would give us those creating them can be done by repurposing some other stuff that I'm doing for a client. So there would be minimal cost in doing it. And it would allow us to charge enough money so that we would have money to really start working on the book. So it would give us a down payment on beginning to edit and do the book. But we could start getting reaction from the marketplace. So I have two partners, or actually three different partners on this particular project. I'd have to talk to them about how we want to price it and getting them to buy in on the concept, which I don't think would be difficult. And I don't think pricing would be difficult to figure out. And then we can get some reaction from the community. So my particular partner has 600 small business coalition partners, so she can reach small businesses really quickly on her website. And it would give the kind of visibility that I think this particular sponsor would be looking for.
Well, it sounds like a very ambitious project. There was one, I was making some notes, Jerry, you said you're gonna do a book series, regional conferences. Was one other, and
Yeah,
white
it's a
papers, was one other element you were putting into it. Can you
Yeah, so
remind me?
Yeah, it's a tech platform
The
that will,
platform, yeah, okay.
has an assessment tool.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And what stage the entrepreneur is in their financing needs, and then match them with the right kinds of financing options. for
Investors, yeah,
technology.
investor opportunities, yeah.
No, not investors, other kinds of, very little on angel and venture capital.
Oh, okay,
So this is for the 99% of businesses that don't raise venture and, angel financing.
okay, okay, got it. For the rest of the non-99, okay, got it.
Yeah, the
Well, that's-
99% of small
Okay, well,
businesses that
yeah,
don't
the
raise
people,
angel
the
and
people that
venture.
we service in the shift workshop for the most part, yeah.
Yes,
Oh, that-
correct.
Well, that's
Barry, I have
that's
a quick
very
question for
interesting.
you. I just need a little clarity on one thing, and that is, who do you need to keep happy? Do you need to keep the sponsor happy, or do you need to keep the end customer happy? Or both?
Both. So initially it'll be the sponsor, but ultimately
What kind of
it
a
is
sponsor are they? Yeah, what kind of
a
a sponsor?
corporation. So it could be a bank, but also this particular company that I think we would go for is not a bank, but they're experimenting with customer financing. So the new thing now is, because let's say retailers pay late, meaning 60, 90 days,
Gotcha.
they're now providing customer financing at low cost. So if you're a small business, if you're a woman and minority, they provide low cost financing. And it could be, I don't know what has happened since interest rates have risen, but it could be as low as 3%.
Wow. Okay, great. So if you keep your customers happy, your sponsors happy. Got it. Okay, so therefore your focus should be on what?
my focus should be, so for me, it's really cranking out content. And I know Vic has a question, so before I finish that one.
Well, very quickly, yeah, no, a great idea. My question was that kind of building what I think Stefan was saying, what does success look like, and what would success mean to, I guess, for you?
Yeah, so success would mean that we have, big sponsors for, the different elements or the initiatives that we laid out. But Stefan is right. If the entrepreneurs aren't happy with the end result, the sponsors aren't going to be happy. So even as I said, it's for the 99% of customers or it's small businesses, it's not really the 99%. It's those small businesses that are growth oriented and probably have, they may not have employees now, but they would be on the cusp of hiring employees. So let's say $150,000 plus, but not scaling businesses that would require venture and equity financing.
So what would your MVP be on this?
It's just a series of white papers on
Research on.
On the need to understand financing and how it changed between. So Stefan and I used to teach entrepreneurship together with a program that Tom was running. So if you would to compare the response to the financial crisis when we first started teaching to the response for pandemic, I believe that between the stimulus money and the fact that there are now so many financing options, women and minorities companies will respond faster and be more resilient as a result of changes that have happened since the financial crisis.
Now, let me ask a question about when you say the minimal product is the white paper. So who's the customer for the white paper?
So it would be the entrepreneur as
Okay.
well as other corporations. So it's sort of it's twofold. It's to get us more sponsors.
Right.
So there's other topics that we could do thought leadership on. So it ties to another initiative that I want to do, which is just repurposing a lot of our research into these thought leadership, but it would be written in a style that the entrepreneurs could relate to. So if entrepreneurs understood why it's so important to now have all of these options, whether it's online lenders, whether it's crowdfunding, rewards-based crowdfunding, whether it's revenue-based financing, there's so many more options out there.
Mm-hmm.
Just understanding them and understanding sort of where they fit in the ease of accessibility and the overall cost.
So Jerry, you're saying you don't need anything other than what you were going to do anyways, which is research. You don't need a tech, you don't need a platform, you don't need any of that. You're just going to have white papers and customers, you just say, hey, here's the research that we've come up with for you.
Yeah, and it's not so honestly, very little of it will be my research. It's a lot of academic research, but turned into plain English.
Gotcha.
So that, we can show the stimulus money made a difference. Well, actually, I will take that back. There will be some of my own research that goes in there, but that research hasn't even been done yet. That won't start to trickle out until late spring, late winter, early spring, or late, whatever, spring. Just keep it at spring.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, I think we probably need to move on to one of the others. I think there's some other thoughts I might have about whether a white paper is the right way to reach a lot of the customers you're trying to reach. Because it may be that a white paper is not something that they want as much as maybe a sort of a video easier to consume than a white paper. Not sure.
So we don't have
I-
to, so some of it is financial, so the writing
Okay,
you do for virtually nothing. Doing a video is gonna cost, and
see,
not that we
okay.
have any of the money. So we need to get some money in before
All
we.
right, so
move
you
to that
feel
next
that
phase.
okay, so this is part of the MVP
Yeah,
strategy, is just
yeah.
the writing is already kind of done, so, all right,
Yeah.
okay,
It's
right.
repurposing
Sherry,
existing stuff.
okay.
Sherry, do you have diversity
I'm sorry, say again,
doing this? Do
say
you
again.
have, you're targeting diverse groups. Do you have someone that represents those diverse groups?
That's a good question, Edna. So my teams are always diverse. So the nonprofit that I'm working with, who heads it up, is a serial entrepreneur and a Black woman. And then my research partner is a Colombian immigrant who has her PhD in economics. And my door is ringing, so my window washers are here. So
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
We'll come back to you the next time. All right, great. All right, so who wants to go next?
I think Vic was next, right?
Yeah, happy to go. Sorry, I'm in a co-working space where they're doing some construction, so hopefully it won't be too loud. But my big idea is to leverage, I call it frugal technology, things like wearables that many of us are familiar with, like an iWatch or Fitbit, to capture data on the people who are disabled. I'll use my daughter as an example, right? She has a disability, to give basically, hopefully, the vitals that you can collect for things like temperature, body temperature, heart rate, oxygen saturation level, potentially blood pressure as well, is to take that data and then being able to leverage that to give a sense of the well-being of the individual. So, is my daughter, is she yellow, red, or green today? That's the concept. And then really, being a caregiver, it's a very stressful life. So if I could have that better visibility over a period of time on her well-being, my hypothesis is that it's going to reduce my stress levels and stress levels of other caregivers as well. So that's a big idea. Certainly, what I'm doing right now is speaking with caregiving organizations, caregiver researchers, caregivers themselves, to get a better sense of what their challenges are, what their pain points are, and what would help them, reduce that stress. And for sure, the data is very clear that being a caregiver is one of the most stressful things that people do, caregiving. So that's definitely an issue or problem. Now it's like really, is there a role that technology can play to reduce that stress level?
What do you, Vic, I have a question for you. What do you think is the number one and two issues that caregivers have?
I think that they're not medically trained, that's for sure.
They're not
right, and they're not medical
trained.
professionals, medically trained. It's something that's been added on to their, very often it's a family member they're taking care of. They have their day job. Now you have the added burden of taking care of someone, who needs to be cared for.
Right.
An example would be just an elderly parent, for example. Right now, if there was a way to give the caregiver better visibility, I'm saying on the wellness, the term wellness is fairly broad, but if you could, use technology and, the data that's being collected, whether it's publicly available, the information that you're collecting about health vitals, could we get a better holistic picture of the well-being of the person and use that information to just make some health decisions.
I'm gonna jump in here just
Yeah.
for timing purposes. The reason why I'm asking is because caregiving is huge. And there are so many things, and I know you know this, there are so many things that you could be focusing on. I would
Right.
suggest for an MVP, and Tom and Edna may think otherwise, but I think that you should focus on one of them, which is medical training. So if you come up, I'm making this up, let's say you come up with the top 10 medical things that they need to know about. And
Right.
boom, that's what you focus on as an MVP or something like that.
Yeah, Tom, so I was speaking with a friend who's a neurologist over the weekend, and you know, just running the concept with him. And I said, what are those vitals that you need? And he said, when a nurse calls me about a patient, the 4 things I ask for is temperature, heart rate, blood pressure, and oxygen saturation level. Based on those 4 health vitals, I have enough information to, and also observations as well. Right. So part of this is like, you know, of course you're collecting the data, but there's other factors as well that you have to kind of incorporate.
Okay, so if you were to create an MVP, what would it be?
Yeah. So what I'm doing right now is that, you know, for me, let me see, I wrote it down, right? For really starting off with a platform, right? So a working clickable design to demonstrate the concept first. And then being able to take that same design, there are platforms that are available that you can go from, you know, doing a mock-up, you can then transfer that into, so it becomes clickable. And not only is it clickable, but you can also feed data into it from, like, you know, you have sources like your existing sources, not even like connecting to a device, and then demonstrate the concept. You know, Tom, to me, that's where it starts with. So it's more of not a minimal viable product right now, but a proof of concept. Because to build the MVP, I'm going to need a lot of resources, and that, you know, time, capital. So my thoughts, and I love to get your opinion of the group, is that, you know, if you can feel something like a proof of concept, is that sufficient to then, you know, look for that next step in terms of funding? I guess I'll use the funding and resources.
I guess a question I would have, Vic, and maybe put yourself on mute while you're listening.
Yes.
Is you know, when you're talking about something like this, which is sort of going to be technology intensive, I just you got to know who else is doing this too. You know, I don't know if you have a sense of that, but just because there's a lot of medical device makers out there who have capacities here. And you don't want to be, you know, going to try to do something that's already being done by, you know, I don't know who, Medtronic, or I'm not sure who it would be who does this kind of thing, but just a caution that you want to be aware of looking at competition in something like this, because this is not what I originally thought you were doing was going to be more of a service providing support, but now you're talking really about a technology device that's going to give information. You know, just suggest that. Yeah, go ahead.
No, thank you for that, Tom. And just to let you know that, you know, being a caregiver for the last 20 years, I've searched. You know, my searches now have been Google searches, right? I've looked in the App Store, and yes, there are. You know, the what I've seen so far are, you know, I think the industry, they're calling it remote patient monitoring. There are companies that are doing that, but that's more institutional. Meaning,
I see. It's only institutional right now. Okay.
Yeah, and you know, these companies have also built their own hardware. They built their own ecosystems, very siloed, right? And I think technology has evolved to a point today, especially with wearables, that I think we can leverage that capability. But you're right. I mean, I do need to do more research as far as what's out there. So thank you for that. I don't want to hug up all the time. So
no, but that's good. That's a good point you make. All right.
Yeah.
Well, good luck. You know, keep working. I mean, work it into some detail. In you know, the homework we'll give is going to be focusing on the sort of over the next 3 months. What can you actually get done so that you can advance this? So
yeah, and one thing I'll add to it. So actually, I attended a MedTech Innovation Summit this week, where there were companies that are selling, you know, this technology, this hardware, and I've actually connected with a couple of folks via LinkedIn. to do some follow-ups. And one gentleman from Microsoft, he basically said, look, set up time with me and I'll tell you what my experience has been. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation.
Good, good. And I mentioned this Octane organization is based in California, but they're very much focused on med tech.
Oh,
So
okay.
it may be that a connection with them might be of some use to you. I'll talk to you separately about that.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Yeah. No, okay. All right. Well, who's next? It's either Sean, Jeff, or Rose.
I can go next if you want.
You got it. Oh, Sean raised his hand, but you spoke, so go. You can go. You can go, Rose.
Okay, perfect. So I own Paul's Car Care. It's a cleaning and detail shop. We basically clean and detail cars, and we also sell like sports special interest and exotic type cars. The sales part of the business has been declining with all the market changes. So now just trying to find sustainability with the company to keep the company going. And finding other sources of revenue. So one of the things my customers do ask me from time to time that I've always in the past refused is removing and replacing interiors. If people have a water leak or funny smell and that kind of stuff, that they need to either have components deeper cleaned by removing parts of the car or replacing parts of the car because they've been experiencing permanent damage. So we started doing this now on a limited basis the past probably month or so. And so I've got somebody on staff that's really good at doing this stuff. So I'm trying to keep that person that was working more on the sales side to come in more on the detail side to kind of expand the scope of services that we can offer. So it's something like my customers have been asking for. So I've just been now saying yes, and working with this particular person on coordinating the project and what needs to happen. Sometimes it's simple, sometimes it's more involved. As far as the minimal viable product, I can develop a radio ad. Doing the radio ad there's no charge. The radio station just helps me record them. Just a matter of paying for the ad. And just it's already. We already augmenting ad campaigns that I already do with the radio station. And one of the things I'm lacking in is social media marketing and what it's all about and how my interest in social media is just very limited. But I know I need to get up to the contemporary marketing strategies of today. So, I have worked with somebody in regards to doing my social marketing, but I've also been in the throes of renovating my office, which was a very extensive renovation. So it's just winding down where I can spend more time working on trying to get my head around it and understanding it better. So as far as it's what my customers are asking for, we have already started to implement it. I'd like to do more of it. It's definitely higher profit margins on it. It's something where I can make money on the parts and on the labor. I also use a business app, and the business app that I'm already using and already paying for. I've just been working on ways to customize that to make it, so that I'm able to monitor the flow of work, that we're charging appropriately, monitoring time and getting metrics on it. And just get it organized, as far as billing practice. Our services with the detailing is typically in by 8 out by 5. It's one day, you generate the work order, generate the invoice, you're done. On these projects, it can be 1, 2, 3 days, a week, 2 weeks, where now I need to keep track of progress and trying to adapt the application that we're using now to help me just track that progress. So it's
Rose,
not
I have a
hard.
really dumb question for you.
Sure.
I just don't know what makes this sustainable.
It's what people are asking for. People bring in their cars, they want to clean because it's got a funny smell. Well, sometimes just cleaning it doesn't always take out that funny smell. You've got to do more. You got to dig deeper.
Got it. So the environmental thing is that customers need their cars cleaned.
Yeah, they come in initially getting their cars clean, thinking we can wave a magic wand and make it all go bye-bye. But the reality is there's materials in the vehicle that are affected permanently by it that need to be removed and replaced in most cases. So we just had one time, I just kind of followed the breadcrumbs, so to speak, where car came in, said it smelled like a mouse in there. Okay, he wants it cleaned. All right, we clean it. So we're cleaning the car, we notice material coming out of the center console, so that leads into removing the seats, taking out the center console and digging out what's underneath there. Now we're looking at that, and now there's material underneath the carpeting, and, you know, so it's just giving customers a service where you're taking care of the problem. There's not a lot of people that do that in this area. And one guy that I know that does do that, he's booked out months ahead of time. I've also contacted a friend of mine who owns a body shop, and I asked him, you know, who do you resource, you know, that kind of service to, because they don't offer that when they're doing body work on the car. So if you got into a car accident, your coffee spilled everywhere, they're not going to clean the inside. They're only going to clean what's been, you know, damaged on the outside. So I said, well, from now on, you know, I said, you know, just letting you know we're doing the work, and, you know, if you want to refer it over to me, that would be great. So another thing I could do as well is contact other body shops that, you know, they want to do the auto body stuff. They don't want to do necessarily the interior stuff that needs to be done.
So Rose, I'm going to give you a couple of quick ideas on the sustainability front, and then I'll stop and I'll let Tom and Edna throw in their comments. On the sustainability side, looking at the, you're going to be hiring from the community, and you can, from a economic standpoint, you know, the triple bottom line, people, planet, profits, right? So the people, on the people front, you can hire economically depressed community employees. That's one. Another thing would be the cleaners that you use to clean the inside of the cars. Can be environmental soaps or cleaners or whatnot. Those are two things that I can throw out there immediately for you.
Okay, well, right now at the moment, I have one person doing this. As far as the cleaning products, it's something that back 5 years ago or so, when I took over the business, I vetted all through all the products that we do use, so that they're environmentally friendly. I'm also connected on
Then marketing the bejesus out of that.
Yeah, so I'm directly connected to the market, to the sewage system or whatever with the city here to, you know, clean, nothing rolls into the street, nothing, it all gets contained.
Love it, love it. So yeah, that needs to be part of your marketing message. The MVP, and then I'll stop after this. The MVP is also how you're going to measure this. So, you know, so that you can go back. So what is the MVP and how are you going to measure it?
Well, I could measure it with the tool that I'm already using now to manage the detailing business. I'm just customizing it to manage now, you know, doing this remove and replace. I need to come up with some kind of catchy term to call it something. So I'm a little stumped on that right at the moment, because if I put remove and replace, people kind of understand it, but not really. So trying to like hold somebody's hand and kind of take them down the road that this is, you know, this is what you're up against, and this is how we can help you.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I could measure the metrics, you know, how much time it takes, what we're charging. I can get the metrics off the app.
Gotcha.
Rose, I'll just chime in and say that my friend had that problem where she had the car washed and the smell was still there, and they really had to dig in and figure it out. So, you know, I'll echo you in knowing that there really is a need for it.
Yeah, there really
There
is.
is a need. Okay.
Yeah, because like I said, people around, or the one shop I know that really does do that stuff, they're booked out months. The guy doesn't even answer the phone anymore.
Wow.
Very good.
So,
No, it sounds like you've got quite a few ideas in mind, and you know, you got a way to think about implementing them. So I'd say, you know, it sounds like a reasonable plan. Just, you know, get the specifics down so you can get the focus on it and get it done. That sounds good.
Yeah. Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah. So let's go to Sean and hear from him, and then we'll have a little bit of time for just the wrap up time and a couple of more things we want to show. Yeah, Sean.
Good morning. I apologize. I am a little under the weather, so I may not sound the best today.
All
But as far as our product goes, MVP wise, as Tom had mentioned, we do have somewhat of a product. We have our first MVP, which is centered around service departments and managing services, better information for technicians and so forth. But however, we do have multiple MVPs that we need to build out. Our product is based on a core information structure that benefits multiple industries, building owners, service companies, more of an inspection process, fire departments, both fire prevention and emergency responders. And then finally, we have a benefit to insurance companies in the long run. So we have a whole host of MVPs to build out. Our first product we're really building towards, I guess I would call it our MMP, minimally marketable product, is for building owners. We are pushing forward with that build right now in development. And you know, if I had to go into our next year in our worksheet already, we're looking at our product release for that and marketing and managing that statewide by the end of next year. That also leads us to our main problems, both further capital. As far as our total product goes, the long-term vision, we've only built out probably less than 10% of the product. We have a lot more to build. Development and funding cost a lot in that realm. It's definitely tech forward, and developers aren't cheap. Our other issues are building our workforce and building our sales force. We have kind of two marketing plans. Building our workforce is going to be focusing on service companies and offering them an option to, you know, bring in another source of income by capturing and mapping properties and setting up building owners with our product. So that's a big push of how we're going to build our workforce going forward. And so again, this is where marketing comes in. And that pretty much covers it. I mean, I could go through our 1 week, 3 week, 1 year, 3 year list and keep you guys for a long time. But we do have a lot, you know. In 3 years, we're looking forward to really releasing all of our products and going nationwide.
Oh, thanks, Sean. And that's pretty darn good for, you know, being under the weather.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I know you had already some of that down because you guys have been working at it for a while. But actually, we would like to go into the at least the short-term part of it in the next session. That's what we're going to ask people to focus on in the homework part is, and maybe let's turn now. We've got just a few minutes left before the end of the session. So I'm going to show a couple more slides and then talk about what we'll like to do between now and then in the next session. So I'm gonna show a couple of slides here, which may or may not be important for you to do right now, but we're going to give you these tools to think about the resource side of your business. And this is relevant to everyone, although it's not, you know, in the very early stages, Vic it's not as important to get this done right now. He's got to really understand the customer need and the exact focus he's going to do first, but you figure out exactly what that's going to cost to do it. But for others of you at different point in your development, the question is, what do you really need to get this done in the way that you want? Because you have either, you know, yourself and a couple of partners, and the question is really, do you have enough to get it done? And would there be an addition of outside resources that could really help you get it done? And so these tools are an aid to help you think that through. I'm going to just go through them very quickly to show you them, and then you're going to have them when you get these slides, and you can utilize them to sort of go through a quick, you know, budgetary process if you choose to, because there are sources of funds that are available coming down from the federal government in a variety of different ways right now. Of course, that's the topic of what Jerry's doing, so she knows all about this. But we're also trying to prepare you for what is the meat and potatoes of doing it. You have to put yourself forward as to what you really need. Next slide, Stefan, and I'll go quick through this. Because it does come down to it's these things fit together. What we've been having you go to is taking a look at what part of your business do you really need to work on to make the shift in your business that is going to help you grow. And then the question is, what can you add to that part of your business to help you get this done more quickly? So the question is, what part of your business could use that resource? Sean was just talking about marketing. Okay, we don't have a lot in the marketing space right now. Well, if you could have money to add to it, what would you do with it? The same is the question with operations, technology, product development. So this is just a tool to help you look at the various parts, where you're going to focus, and what would help you and your partners, or you if you're doing it yourself, get this done more effectively and more quickly. Next slide. And then the question is, when would that resource be useful to you? As I said, it may not be ready right now, but you want to think about, depending on what you're doing, as Jerry described to us, the things that she has in mind, she may want to take a look at, okay, when would it really be good to have that additional resource? And then the question is, how do you go get that resource? And what's it going to go for, and how much do you want to have in these different buckets? These are all, again, we're not going to spend a lot of time in this particular workshop in the budget part. We've done this in the past where we've kind of spent the whole last session talking about that. But we're this time just presenting this for you to have to use in the future. So next slide. All right. So what we want you to do in your homework, and I'm going to go back and show you one more slide, and Edna and I are going to talk about this together. We want you to kind of review and update what you've already done. And in doing that, we want you to really use the timeline, because now is the time to take all the work you've done so far, beginning with the roadmap, looking at where you want to go and what your obstacles are, and take a look at that shift gearbox. What is it you're going to change? What part of your business or your business idea, in Vic's case, where do you have to emphasize? And what we want you to have when you get done with the workshop at the end of the next session is a very solid 3-month plan with milestones. What are you going to do next week? What are you going to do in 3 weeks? And where do you want to be in 3 months? And if it's relevant, to put together a resource budget page to consider how new resources might help you grow. So Stefan, I ask you to just go back for a moment to that shift timeline one that has the comments on it. Boom, boom, boom. That's it. Stop. That's it. Yeah. Okay. So I want you to, you'll get this, and this is what I want you to work on is the timeline. And Edna, jump in on this, because Edna was the one who's really making the point, and she made it in her talk about her own situation. The point is to think about, what can you do now? This is really an action focus. What can you do right now in the next 3 weeks and the next 3 months to make something happen? Edna, do you want to add anything when you think about your own experience and what you want to share with people here?
I can only tell you that this frame was very important to me because I really was actionable. And like Vic, I was always thinking about the 3-year. I was always thinking about that, and I was drawing everything towards that. But I started chopping it down in small pieces, right? So that I could literally do something right away, because I'm an actionable person. So I'm impetuous sometimes, but if I strategize it, and this is a great way to do it, strategize what could I do that effectively could get the information for me to do what I needed to do. So one of my changes was, how do I didn't want to get into the to marketing, sales and marketing. You know, although I was part of it in my professional life, I didn't want to do that. So I had to be consistent in the social media world. I had to be consistent. So that was one of my things that I had to do. What could I do? So the first thing I did was made a plan to create consistency on all the platforms. And that meant me getting out with my face, with my, speeches or my content, whatever it was, and get in front of, everyone. So that's what I started doing, because what I found out for myself is I was creating an experience, not a product or a service, really. I was creating an experience. So what does an experience mean? It means that they have to trust you and you have to be in their presence. They have to really trust you what they have, which is their lives, So this really got me into starting something and just getting in the presence of people. And then it opened up the podcast. And I started that 2 years ago when I did start working with this program. And the podcast is now picked up by Amazon. It's on Alexa, it's on Siri. It's one of the top programs that, Amazon kind of puts out there. And I was really honored when they picked me up, but it was because I took an initiative to, okay, what can I do right now? And engage the actionable step of what can I do right now to make changes and be in front of everyone, that I can really, gain the trust of people instead of chasing behind my clients and looking for them and finding them. They were seeing me and they were asking and drawn to me. So that's what this timeline is about, is all actions.
Yeah, amen. Edna, that's well said. And let me tell you, as an observer of Edna, I can tell you she has really bloomed, in so many different ways. But it is, and I could see it. I mean, that it is really by following what she has just said here, and she has become extremely noticeable. She is out there, and she has developed multiple followings, and the professionalism of how she does it has just kind of skyrocketed, and her business performance has skyrocketed too. So she is a great example of, starting next week on this, and then having an idea in mind, but really following and sticking to it and working hard at it, at what her brand is, and getting out in front of people and understanding who her people are. And that is very, very important. So figure that out for yourself, you're not everyone is going to be like Edna, but in your world, you have to kind of have that business persona. We are the fire prevention people, and you got to get known for that. And Rose is, we are the sustainable car people. Boom. You want a really clean car? Boom. Come to us, and then we can cover that waterfront. Anyway, okay. So let's just come to the end, to the last slide, which is just what's coming next week. Oh, there it is. All right. So next week is the wrap up. We're gonna mostly go over your plans and really spend more time on that. Have more back and forth with that. We're not going to give you a whole lot more new content. We will sort of talk about the workshop in general and talk about your futures. That's really what it is session 4. Why don't you close down the slideshow, and we're over time, but I don't know if anyone has any comments or questions. There you go. But that's it. All right, set to go. Everyone understands homework?
Got it.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
Yep.
You.
Okay,
Take
you
care.
guys are good. You guys are good. You're
Okay.
with it, and let's wrap it up and go fly off, and get going now. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
And we're gonna stay on, right? We're gonna talk for
Yeah.
a couple of minutes. Yep.